Let me guess, make every race weaker and orc stronger. It's a great suggestion.
That's everything you need to know, I guess. That's probably everything you need to know about the content for the upcoming 1 hour. It's a good summary already.
And
Okay.
I hope it includes suggestions for every race and some neutral changes as well. This is not an official patch. These are just my ideas for it. I hope you will enjoy hearing my thoughts for it. And I hope it encourages some healthy discussion. All right,
So,
let's jump in.
I'm super curious because orcs are obviously complaining for a long time. I haven't heard any specific suggestions from most people. There were a couple of orcs, of course, who I talked to, who had some good ideas. But oftentimes it's just buff, just do this, just do that. I want specifics. I want specifically targeted units with specific values. And Grubby obviously thought a lot about it, so this is why I'm really, really curious. And they don't really have a spokesperson, right? Especially in the European scene. There's no real orc spokesperson. And in Asia, I think in general, they don't comment much on balance, even though I talked to a couple of people in private. So I do have the Eastern perspective. But as I learned, the Eastern and Western perspective is very, very, very different. So yeah, very exciting.
Into it. Okay, so my goals for the patch are going to be the following. From my perspective, Human is performing quite well. Orc is performing a little poorly. Nightelf is doing okay, but a lot of the power comes down to Demon Hunter. So there will be some balancing there. And I think Undead overall is doing okay, but it's mostly the high-level players that are doing well with it. Their representation in the lower ranks is definitely less frequent. I think they're a little harder to play, which means a top player like Happy can get a lot out of it. But Happy actually wins with every race. He has won the random tournament time after time. I just think his game IQ and skill is so high, and he has shown that by actually dominating in every random format as well. So I don't think Happy's success should be punished with Undead nerfs, and I do think we had that a little bit recently, so I'm looking to bring Undead up a little bit as well. And then there will be some balance changes to maps and through Mercamp changes as well. All right, let's begin.
Let's feedback this. Fully agree. Almost fully agree. I would like to add one thing. Bring Demon Hunter down a bit, yes. But I also feel like there should be a compensation for unused Nightelf units, but he'll probably comment on that at some point as well. And shout out to thinking about maps and Mercamps. I mean, there's probably a result of yesterday's trigger that Leon brought to him, right, on Last Refuge, and orcs hate Mercamps in general. And if there's one race who definitely suffers from facing Mercamps, then we should definitely think about
just to maps and through Mercamp changes as well. All right, let's begin. All right, the neutral changes.
Ooh.
The neutral changes that I will be seeking. Let me move this a little bit.
Ooh.
The neutral changes that I will be seeking are, I really like the effect that the piercing damage versus heavy armor has done.
Yes!
I was very unsure about this in particular. Heavy armor used to take 100% damage from piercing, and it was actually nerfed to 90% recently. How long has it been? A couple of months, half a year? I'm not quite sure, but I think it's been quite valuable. We see more Tauren usage against riflemen. We see more Tauren usage in general, together with the resistance skin that has really helped, I think.
We also see more abominations. We also see, in general, more melee stuff, which then kind of gets countered by mass air, which is not too great. But this was a hated change at first, and many people completely overreacted to it. I was a big fan at the beginning. I defended it throughout the rough early stages, and I'm still 1000% sure that this is and was the right call.
And we also see that the piercing domination of rifles, headhunters in particular, and then fiends to a lesser degree. And for archers, it doesn't really apply. But I guess to a degree for dryads, it does. They're a little bit less good against the tanks of this game. The Druids of the Claw, the Knights, which are supposed to counter piercing as well. Grunts against archers or dryads are supposed to be a decent tank. And they will be a little bit more as well. I would like to see this go even a little further because I still think Rifle will do very well against Grunt, are doing very well against Grunts right now. I still think Headhunters are doing very well against heavy armor as well, such as Grunts or other heavies. And Piercing is still way better at creeping overall than Melee, also because it doesn't take much damage and it can hide behind summons. I'm curious how this would make the game feel like. Then let's talk about the Forest Troll Shadow Priest. He's kind of a balance breaker. It's interesting because many of the competitive one-on-one melee maps actually include a mercenary camp, and almost all of them are the Lordaeron Summer mercenary camp.
Agree.
Warcraft 3 has many different tile sets, and Lordaeron Summer is just one of them, but it's the most commonly used one, which means that somehow, some way, the 4 mercenaries that are available in the mercenary camp have pretty much defined balance on many of those maps for basically the entire history of Warcraft 3.
Yep.
And they've never really been changed or revised much. The Priest, the Berserker, the Mud Golem, and the Ogre Mauler have long defined what is possible with those mercenary camps. And if we're not going to be having many maps having the alternative creeps all that much, which Shattered Exile does have, they have the Rogue Assassin and a bunch of other creeps like the Inner Fire Troll Priest, the High Priest. If most maps are going to continue having Lordaeron Summer, I think there needs to be some nerfs on what I perceive to be balance-breaking bugs. My balance-breaking overpoweredness. And because Forest Troll Priest offers things that are not normally available. So I think there's a really big difference between the balance on a map like Northern Isles, where Orc and Undead are performing better, or are better, I would say. I don't know the exact stats. And then you have a map like Lost Refuge, where Human and Nightelf are going to be performing better because they have a pocket Lordaeron Summer mercenary camp available to them, which actually unlocks healing and dispel when a race is not supposed to have it. And I guess supposed is controversial because you could argue that they are supposed to have it because the mercenary camp exists. I'm just saying the races normally don't have these options. Only Night Elf has tier 1 Dispel, and everybody else gets it at 7 minutes, 6 minutes or so. Undead gets it at 8.5, 9 minutes with Destroyers, and the Priest just changes that. In a way, you could say that this is interesting and unique. I previously thought that Forest Troll Shadow Priest should get their Abolish Magic upgrade removed altogether because this has been done on a map like Springtime, where the priests are the exact same value, the same cost, HP, damage, and they have heal, but they simply don't have the Abolish Magic spell.
True.
And while I think that's a valid option as well, that has been trialed on Springtime, and I think it is very successful to make the game feel more fair, as Priest has a really big impact on certain races and heroes more than others. Human and Elf can use the Priest the best, and Orc is the most disadvantaged from the existence of Priest because Farseer becomes a much, much less valid hero on those maps, since you can just keep dispelling his wolves, especially if you can give the Shadow Priest more mana with the help of Moonwell regeneration or with the help of Brilliance Aura on the Archmage. So it really messes up racial balance on maps where Abolish is available. I think removing Abolish altogether, like on Springtime, is valid. But another option that could be done is to reduce the amount of damage that Abolish deals to summons. That way you keep the Dispel ability for effects like being able to remove Polymorph, Slow, Inner Fire, etc. or Speed Scroll, but you're not able to do quite as much damage on summons. 200.
Ooh, interesting. This would obviously also help Cryptlord. This would obviously also help Archmage. Farseer, of course, also a Keeper. Who would benefit most from this? Is the question. So in general, like historically, mercenaries never got touched, and we used the Lordaeron Summer mercenary camp because the others were just more or less trash and didn't fit melee at all, was either super weak or super powerful. So this is why we only saw Lordaeron Summer, but that's slowly getting addressed thanks to map makers and Save Orcas who give feedback on such things. So there's a whole new world that could open to us if we want to change mercenary camp things. I would say if you align this with like a water elemental nerf, that's fine. Making summons stronger in general is to me not really necessary. Because summons early game are already very, very strong, and I'm not sure if this is necessary. I do see where he's coming from, though.
50 damage is the exact value of a level 1 Feral Spirit, and if you were just to lower that, Priest would still be treasured for their ability to heal, dispel, and do some damage to summons, but it wouldn't be as egregious as an instant abolition of a Feral Spirit. I think this would be a very healthy change for maps like Lost Refuge, where Human has a massive advantage against Orc to the point that it's completely unplayable, actually. You cannot play Farseer, but Blade is not valid against Human right now either. Another thing is they become available 2 minutes into the game, which is when heroes are coming out. Heroes come out anywhere between 1:58 to 2 minutes and 2 seconds. So the Priest becomes available at the same time. That means there's never a chance for a Blade or a Farseer to block access to an enemy mercenary camp or fight over the hiring or the acquisition of it. The Priest is already out on the field before the Farseer could possibly even arrive. That means Orcs lose their ability to be successfully harassing an enemy.
I think this obviously was designed a long time ago, right? And back then, you kind of had to fight the creep camp and then get the Shadow Priest. But the game has evolved so much that you pull the creep camp and you don't even have to creep it. You just distract the creeps, get the Shadow Priest, and then move on. So this change would get the mercenary interaction more in line with today's Warcraft, which I think is a very good thing in general if you can't really fix the creep behavior as a whole.
With how strong the Priest is, as it can be hired by doing a pull on the mercenary camp.
There we go.
Which is completely without any investment from the Human or Night Elf player.
Yes.
They don't have to first clear it. They can just pull it away with a worker or a tier 1 unit. And making it available at 2 minutes makes it so polarizing so early. Let's say if you don't like this change where it lowers damage or it removes Abolish altogether, making it available from 3 minutes onwards would already make it a lot less egregious in disrupting racial balance. Another one is that the next one that's available after a Priest gets hired, it comes back again in 110 seconds, which means in a 4-minute game, Human can hire their second Priest already. So they get the first one when they creep their Archmage at 2 minutes 15 on the mercenary camp on a map like Lost Refuge. Then they take a fast expansion. Meanwhile, Orc is trying to stick to their ways and harass with Farseer anyway, because Blade Master is like a default loss. And then by 4 minutes, the second Priest comes out. So even if you do manage to somehow, some way, get the Human to blunder and lose their Priest, the second one comes out. And then the third one at 6 minutes. So it's just all too much. It really imbalances fast expansion builds because you get a free second barracks that has tier 2 level units in that they're basically like a Human Priest. They heal and they dispel.
So this sounds a bit exaggerated if you just hear it, but especially on Echo Isles, I've seen this a lot from top players. And then we fight each other with our altar heroes and mostly mercs. That shouldn't be the game, in my opinion. Mercs are always nice additions to give you something that you need in the moment, but it should never be your core army in my game philosophy. So I would probably agree to this without thinking too much about it.
So I think these are very necessary and overdue nerfs that will, if they go through, will allow mercenary camps to continue to be used in any future maps. Otherwise, I think maps should entirely remove pocket mercenary camps from maps where the mercenary camp is in between the main and the expansion and is completely able to be protected by militia pools. Lost Refuge is a big offender in this regard. And there are some other maps that have slightly less egregious placements of mercenary camps. A good example.
I don't really like how drastic he is here. If you don't do what I want, delete it from the game. obviously very exaggerated here. I think mercenary camps have become too common on maps. Like they are basically a default on most maps. Some are way too easy to creep, way too close to the bases where they're always accessible. Kevin in chat says, I think the Merc camp on SG is well implemented, very rough to creep and far from Expo. That's also because it has the Forest Troll Warlord, right? That's not too easy to pull because it's a ranged creep and not a caster. So this automatically defends better than most other creeps. And yes, it's further out as well. I'm 100% with you that this is a very good example. But most maps that we use were designed before the meta of creep pulling took over. And I think we're a little behind the actual gameplay right now when it comes to mercenary values and mercenary creeps around it. So it's very, very good that Grubby opens up this box of Pandora and let people talk about this. It's very necessary, very good. I like this. Even though I wouldn't 100% agree with everything that's here, I think it's very good we talk about it.
Example is, I believe on Warhill, I think there's a mercenary camp, but it's both bigger, further, and less conveniently placed. But then some other maps, I believe Scrimmage has a mercenary camp.
Yep.
That's again a pocket camp
Yep.
between the main and the expansion, and this leads to problematic balance.
Scrimmage, big offender. Otherwise, great map, but it's exactly what he says.
Goblin Shredder, I think, has too long been a polarizing, unhealthy, unfun effect on the game. A part of this game is that gold is pretty much seamless and lumber can be scarce. Everybody has enough workers to put 5 workers on their gold mine. And while this sometimes gets disrupted, it almost always pretty much gets restored immediately again by the defensive player. But lumber denial strategies or tech limitations through excessive lumber spending are definitely a thing. It just so happens to be that once someone hires a Goblin Shredder, all lumber problems go away about 2 minutes after the Shredder has been hired.
Guys, is it just me? My brain breaks when I have the new value on the left side and the old value on the right side. Because I read from left to right, and now I see new value. Okay, it's that. I want to compare it to the right, which I know, but the new I don't know. And then I have to like think about the new values, then check, and then go back to get reminded about the new values again.
A Shredder can carry 200 lumber, which is up from the 10 that a peon or a peasant can carry. Peasants, of course, can be upgraded to carry 15 or 20 lumber. Wisps bring back their lumber every, 6.5 seconds. They bring back 5 lumber at a time. Ghouls carry 20 because they chop 2 at a time, but they're also 2 supply. The Shredder is 4 supply, but he carries 200. He does 10 lumber per chop, and he does 20 he does 10 chops to bring, it is 20 chops, right? It is 20 chops. And he does 20 chops to bring 200 lumber back, which is just a lot. He does cost nearly as much as a fast expansion right now, which pretty much puts Shredder in this weird spot where you never get him if you need a bit of lumber. You get him when you need a lot of lumber, and your lumber economy has been greatly hurt. The problem that I have with that is that when you hurt someone's lumber economy seriously, it would be fun if that has a lasting effect that really messes with their ability to tech up. And as it stands, that's only true for 2 minutes. As long as a player rustles up 100 wood and then hires a Shredder is actually far more efficient, as he only costs 4 supply, but he actually does the work of about 10 workers. 1 Shredder will gather more lumber than 8 peons will. So it is, even if I lost 6 peons, 7 peons on lumber, if I hire a Shredder, I'll only need to twiddle my thumbs for a minute or 2, and after that, I'm going to be in the thousands of lumber soon. I'll always have enough. And I just think the effect is too big.
It's also a little bit of a vulnerability, right? Because your lumber basically depends on 1 unit and not 7 to 8. So that might be a point where you can snipe it with like Mass Wyvern, whatever. It can be repaired, of course. Is that like, There's counterplay. Shredder is crazy. Shredder is freaking crazy, and it gets a bit amplified again by creep spots not guarding laboratories correctly anymore because we learned how to pull them. So the accessibility is a lot easier than it was 5, 6, 7 years ago. And people learned to respect the value of lumber. So we see way more shredders. I'm waiting for the day where we have 2 shredders at a time. I don't know if the values are correct, but in general, shredder is crazy.
I think it would be more healthy if his ability to bounce someone's lumber economy wasn't as strong as it is now, but then you also lower the initial investment for him so that it doesn't cost quite as much as an expansion. This guy will still help you, but he won't be a single solution to fix your lumber for the rest of the game anymore. There will still be some workers that will be required to help him in order to give a player enough lumber. Maybe he wouldn't be 4 food anymore. Maybe he should be 3 food in that case. And I think that would make a lot of sense. Okay, let's go on to human. Human, in my opinion, this is the perspective that I'm coming at it from. I think human is the strongest race right now. It is not by an extremely huge margin, but I do think it is a significant margin. I think they are neither the easiest nor the hardest race to play well. But I do think they are the best at the highest level. And I also think they are pretty comfortable at every level because of some of the mechanics which make it quite easy for them to win games, like Rifle Priest and Pala Rifle is not like the hardest builds to play. But then also at the high level, I think they're doing very well. As you can also see by the ELO rankings and the performances at tournaments. I believe these are not specifically about what units are used, like rifles or knights or griffins. I think it is about an integral strength of the race. So I'm looking to address that with a baseline change. Militia.
Okay, so I wouldn't disagree much with this assessment. Human is very good, and it's a very well-designed faction. And I think ideally more races should be like human, in a way that they have a lot of answers to a lot of things, and they can transition not seamlessly, but with little penalty from one thing to another, which is really good in an RTS. I do think they have it a little too easy right now to establish a very good foundation in the early game. And that's a combo of militia plus whatever first hero it is. Whether that's a Mountain King with a super strong bash, or if it's an Archmage with a super strong Water Elemental, that's basically interchangeable. You can also throw in Dark Ranger or Firelord. I do realize from previous patches, though, that every change in early games is extremely fragile. So bringing that down is not easy at all. And I also think that Human got a great development recently by moving away from relatively boring one base rifle caster timings all the time to a lot more variety, which is very good. So let's not cripple the race, I would say.
They do the same damage as a footman, and you can call anywhere from 5 to 8 in the early game. Not at no penalty, because you will lose lumber income, but they are such a big part of human base defense, human creeping, and human expanding. And this pretty much always puts human a little bit ahead, especially against Orc. And I think the militia do too much damage. They used to have 4 armor, which was pretty crazy. This has recently been nerfed to 3 armor, which I think is a healthy step in the right direction. But the amount of damage militia do, I still think it is very, very high. And I think it's too high. So I'd be looking to bring down their damage by 1.
So this would be not only less base defense, but also creep speed. And human is pretty much the leader in creep speed. And they can also creep stuff by themselves. Like single camps. So since we reduced the damage by ghouls by 1, and a lot of people cried about it, I still think it's an okay change in hindsight, alongside with the other changes at the time. This might already be enough. Or you leave the militia and tackle the heroes. I don't know.
This will have an effect on everything, including Pala Rifle builds, human fast expansion builds into Mass Griffins, human Archmage Alchemist, Mass Dragon Arc into Night Elf, whatever it is, it will have a small effect on all of it, but not insignificant. The Spellbreaker change, I'm a little bit less confident about the necessity of it, because I think the Militia change will already be a small, healthy, incremental change, but I do feel like Spellbreaker armor is quite high. Spellbreakers get used mostly very much against Orc and against Human. Human right now has the advantage against Orc, in my opinion. Of course, all of this is in my opinion. And the Spellbreaker is an integral part of that, as he invalidates much of the power that Farseer and Tauren Chieftain are bringing. As such, 1 armor less would probably be healthy there. And the second advantage would be that Human Mirror has always had 2 valid strategies. One actually super valid, which is Mass Spellbreakers, which nobody likes watching or playing.
True.
And making Spellbreakers worse would help that matchup to possibly break out of that into the secondary strategy, which is less good because it lacks the tempo and momentum, which is Mass Knights and or Knight Mortar team. And then possibly opening up Griffins because they're good against Mortars. Because there's also Priests, which the Mortars are targeting, etc. Knight Mortar Priest has the power to beat Breakers, but it always loses out by momentum because Spellbreakers are just that good, because they can't be spellcasted against like Stormbolt or whatever other hero you use that has spell damage. So I think this would have a healthy effect on both the human-human matchup, possibly opening up tier 3 a little bit more, and also healthy against Orc. Okay, so Arcane Tower.
I want to bring up another idea by Cini, who had an alternative idea to Spellbreakers, and that is to make the collision size bigger, so you can't clump up too many of the Spellbreakers in the front row. That would, of course, make it easier to build a wall, but that would also make it so that Breakers can't retreat into the base, similar to a Rifleman. Spellbreakers are very unique in having such a small collision size for a 3-food tier 2 unit. You would have less concentrated damage and less concentrated feedback if there are fewer Spellbreakers in the front row. And I think Cini's idea is cooler, but that's just theory crafting, right? Because we haven't seen it at all. Could lead to advantages that I am not aware of right now. Could get some ripple effects. A lot of people hate Spellbreakers, and I don't really know how much that would change, if it's really an armor thing or not. I personally wouldn't think that armor makes or breaks this unit, so it would probably not mega hurt them. I like from just a thinking perspective, from thinking about the idea, I like Cini's idea better.
Was buffed at some point to burn more against heroes. I think this was a response actually to how OP Cryptlord was 5-6 years ago. Like the Cryptlord was super strong. You could burrow at tier 1, the Beetles without upgrade. Everybody was playing Undead Cryptlord, massing Beetles and just winning all the games with it. That's when they roughly buffed the Arcane Tower. I think we've sailed past that point of necessity quite a bit, and I just think it burns heroes too much. Even at 12, you don't want to take a single hit of mana burn normally on your heroes. I think it's too much. Mana burn is one of the most powerful things in this game, and it's a crazy number. They don't even need to make second Arcane, usually. Even a single Arcane is so crazy. If they want to burn that much mana, I think they can make a second tower if they need to burn that much mana. But otherwise, this is already a lot. And unchanged on units. And then for...
This would also help Demon Hunter to go back to the I just enable immolation, especially in combination with the lower militia value, right? This would be a huge Demon Hunter buff, actually. Yeah, I don't know if I like this. Hey Neo, could you please send greetings from me to my friends in chat? Legiker and Roffel die Katz 1990. Of course, Kerr. And Warden. Yeah, and Warden. I don't think this is necessary, to be honest. Is it necessary? We move to a point where a lot of people are already burning all their mana from somewhat of a distance, or if you're a Demon Hunter Warden, you either burn your entire mana and then do right clicks, or you have like an anti-magic shell or something. Maybe I'm missing something here, but I don't really see the point. Changer says lowering armor to fix breaker mirrors. Yeah, I mean, it would be on both sides, right? It wouldn't change anything in mirror.
Sorceress had a cool buff recently where Polymorph lasts not just for a while on units, but also can be cast for 1.5 seconds on heroes, which is quite interesting. But you know what? We haven't seen it at all. It could still be a pocket effect to be used when you're dealing with enemy channeling ultimate abilities like Big Bad Voodoo or I don't know, like Tranquility, but usually the opportunity cost of getting to Polymorph is too high. Now, Master Training doesn't just unlock Polymorph, it also unlocks bonus 80 health, bonus 100 mana, some extra regen for health and mana. But at 75 seconds, it is a large opportunity cost to tie up an Arcane Sanctum for that long. I think Polymorph is a cool spell that does have counters. The cost is high at 200 mana. And it's quite fun, but we never see it. And it would be cool to open that up potentially.
I see this.
I saw this suggestion recently on the Save Orcast document. And I think it's a good one. Not for every caster, not for Inner Fire, but for Sorceress, yes.
I have to look up, like, if there's... I see already that he wants to do this for a lot of other casters too. So what's he excluding is the question. Because the general idea is make Master Training more accessible for almost all casters. So he wouldn't do this for priests, for example, right? He would do it for Shaman, Witch Doctor. So he is a bit selective. Well, the original proposal was every Master Training 60 seconds. I want to see more Master Spells. They're so walled behind 75 seconds of occupying that production building. I really, really want to see stuff in that direction for every race. Not sure if you have to exclude casters or if that should just be streamlined 60 seconds.
Okay. Now let's take a look at Orc. You will see that there are more buffs here. Of course, I'm an Orc player.
Surprise!
Some people will say it's bias, and you know, maybe that's true, but I do think that Orc is performing the poorest now. I think the stats in the tournament results show it, and most...
Yeah, but come on. That's so biased. Like, obviously, the results are worse if the best player of that race isn't playing. Like that, you can't say just because Focus is not winning tournaments, Orc should be buffed. Like, Focus is obviously not as good as a Happy is. So should Focus then win tournaments even if he's not that good? It has to be respected because that's on the lower levels. Orc is pretty damn good, I would argue. Going by that logic, Undead is super OP because Happy exists. Well, that was what a lot of people were saying. Take Happy and 40 away, and everything is different. Like, of course, 40 was in a slump for a little bit, right? But let's take the entire last 2 years, and then that totally fits. Because if you do that, you end up with the world ranking. That's pretty damn good, I gotta say. So we go to the stats. You take Happy 40 away. You got Chaos Sock, Infi-Moon, Focus 1-0, Labby, Life. Soen is a little bit further down. Focus probably in a little bit of a downswing, but he had an upswing there as well recently. He's dipping a little bit. Like, if you take the 2 top dogs away of the past 2 years, let's do like this. And then you have to take Lin out as well. Then it looks like this, right? It's pretty good. Yeah, I don't like that logic. I don't like that logic at all. Not saying that he doesn't have a point, right? Not saying that Orc doesn't need a little bit of help. But I also want to say that you can't compare the tournament performances of a Focus with the tournament performances of a Happy. That should be obvious to everybody.
Most of these are low impact changes to units that pretty much don't see play, right? The big ones, I'm just going to point them out right now. The big ones with the potentially highest impact are Orb of Lighting and Heal Self. We'll get to them later. But most of this is bringing up something that's not valid. Demolisher and Burning Oil is pretty much not being used at all right now. And it's a pretty cool spell. But at the moment, it does 18 damage over 2.5 seconds in a small radius. Very small radius. And nobody ever had to worry about demolishers or counter them, at least in one-on-one. They're not very good, and even with this, it probably still will not be very good. It still probably won't be something you'll necessarily go for, which is also why I think it justifies that buff.
Also, by the way, Focus was in the grand final of WSB. Like, it's not that it's impossible to perform. Like, he just was in the final. I don't think I have anything against it. Siege is just, in general, rarely played. Burning Oil is pretty cool. If we see more Burning Oil, yeah, let's
Shaman
go.
damage. Shaman is one of the few units in the game that needs 3 hits to kill a sheep. He has a DPS of 5, magic damage, and against medium, of course, this is reduced. He needs 3 hits to kill a 15 HP sheep. Now, I understand that Shaman is an enabling unit. He's a support unit that is supposed to have some quick dispel, and then he gets Bloodlust, which is a very cool spell that doesn't see any play in one-on-one, except in Orc Mirror. Right? We see it sometimes. Now, speaking of Orc Mirror, Shamans get used when a Blade Master Shadowhunter player defends against a Farseer player. They then transition to tier 3, possibly adding a Pit Lord or a Fire Lord third after Blade Shadow. And this is one of the counter strategies potentially. It's a Farseer tech into Torrents, a Farseer tech into Mass Headhunters. Bloodlust is one of the coolest spells, but it really suffers from...
Do you know how important killing sheep is for Grubby? He does it all the time. Big true. In this damage calculation, you can't forget the fact that they also do purge damage, right? So this is not the only damage they do, but they also tap on a lot of summons. Which is, of course, a condition that a game has to have, that there is a summon, but if there's a summon, they do great damage. Something that a Necro, a Banshee, a Sork, etc. don't have, right? A Witch Doctor.
Having been good in 2002, which is of course quite recent, which is why it's understandable that Bloodlust has barely been buffed outside of the mana cost reduction that we had a couple of years ago. Shamans were good in 2002 in Reign of Chaos, and then when Frozen Throne was designed, Blizzard had a knee-jerk reaction to deal with all the mass caster builds that were prevalent back then. Mainly Priest Sork Mass, even Mass Talents, and also Mass Doctors and Shamans. So big tools were added to other races to deal with Shamans, such as Spellbreakers that could steal the buff, Destroyers that would abuse the buff by gaining damage and health every time they steal Bloodlust, which they can do on a short cooldown for no mana cost.
Not that short.
And that makes Bloodlust unusable in those matchups. Against Nightelf, Bloodlust is theoretically good though it's difficult to get to. And Dryads, Wisps, and Fairy Dragons are all pretty good counters against Shamans with Bloodlust, though you could precast Bloodlust before so that you don't have to deal with Fairy Dragons before a fight. But overall, the opportunity cost of getting it generally means you're not getting it. You're usually under pressure to get a more relevant army more quickly. Again, suffers from that, wow, what a cool spell, but it has many counters and it takes so long to get. So I would reduce the Master Training by 15 seconds.
I like the Master Train.
And while
again.
Shaman are damage enablers of other units once they have Bloodlust, the rarity of how often you get that, I think justifies getting them 1 extra damage, as Shamans have pretty much been used less and less, even against Nightelf and Human, where they were needed the most. And they should maybe do a bit more damage. Witch Doctor.
I don't think the Shaman bonus damage is like an essential thing one should focus on.
There is an interesting unit that had a lot of balance changes recently. Healing Ward was given magic immunity, so it can no longer be Spellbreaker stolen, which I think has been a very healthy change for 1-on-1 or 2-on-2 or 3-on-3. Heal Ward is actually extremely powerful in 4-on-4, which is an unfortunate casualty by the wayside of some of the Stasis, Sentry, and Heal Ward changes that have happened recently that makes wards magic immune, so they can no longer be dispelled from a
It is crazy in FFA.
by destroyers or stolen by spellbreakers. The unfortunate thing is in 4-on-4, mostly every player on every team is unskilled, which is why they play 4-on-4, not 1-on-1. So even if there's a healing ward staring them in the face,
Ooh, shots fired. Ooh.
nobody will click it, even if they have the tools available. And that means that healing wards pretty much get their full value in 4-on-4 all the time. And that's a 2% max health per second value that people are getting, right? And also in 4-on-4, sometimes the game drags on to 25, 30 minutes, and then an orc may be able to place so many that canceling them actually becomes impractical, even for people with eyes. As such, I would reduce the effect of Healing Ward to 1.5% max HP per second. It had already been buffed to be 150 mana instead of 200 mana, and that means you are already able to place them earlier and more frequently. So it seems to make sense that this will reduce the value it has in 4-on-4, while still being a fair nod towards 1-on-1, where the lower mana cost also justifies that you can cast them more often. You'll have to place them more often, but you can because of the mana cost. Unfortunately, the opportunity cost of upgrading a Witch Doctor to Master Training is still proving to be pretty much unviable in all 4 matchups, Orc v Orc, Orc v Human, Orc v Undead, and Orc v Elf. I would really like to see what happens if it's a shorter Master Training. By comparison, Master Spirit Walkers is a 65-second training presently, and we do see that upgrade sometimes. Also because
So the Human Priest is not getting the 60-second treatment, but all Orc casters do, huh?
Because of its synergy with a unit from the same building, which is the Torrents. Master Druid of the Claw training is 35 seconds at the moment, and of course we see that upgrade all the time, and you can see how comfortable it is to have an upgrade last
Which is
that
nuts.
short.
But yeah,
I'm not
60-second
advocating
master
for
upgrade.
35 seconds,
Here we go.
But getting closer to either 60 or 65 seconds like the Master Walker, I think would be interesting, as you may be able to see doctors more often. They're still low DPS. I believe they're the same as a Sorceress, about 7 or 8 DPS or so, a bit more, or maybe, I think it's 6.3 DPS, the same as a Sorceress. But of course, that's not mainly what you're getting Sorceress and Witch Doctor for. Stasis is hard to use in 1-on-1. Sentries were greatly nerfed. This will nerf the Healing Ward. Can they come out more often? This may solve Orcs' expensive healing problems. Okay, the Troll Bat Rider. This is an interesting one. I have no interest making the Bat Rider better at a base level. Bat Rider right now is a counter unit that is designed to take out
That's one of my ideas.
medium air for the most part, like Gargoyles, Hippo Riders, Hippogriffs, Wind Riders, other Bat Riders, Dragon Ox if you're faster. They've always not done as well against Griffins, Chimera, Frostworm, and Destroyers because of their larger HP pool. They do 550 damage to a primary target, and they do 140 damage to those that they can splash upon. So there's an incentive for the orc to micro to the point where the units are clumped together for an opponent, but there's also an incentive for the defending player to split their units to lower the value. Now, a Troll Bat Rider costs 160 gold, which means 2 bats can kill a baseline Griffin. That's 320 gold for 280 HP, for 280 gold, which is roughly similar, but a little bit more costly for the orc. But then the orc gets experience points from that. So that's how that kind of evens out. But once...
Okay, so I guess he's gonna explain a lot here. So the problem is, once there's high armor on units, it becomes ineffective to use bats. And he wants the explosion to scale with attack upgrades that they get. So the AoE explosion scales as well to counter the higher armor. I think this is really cool. This is an idea that I also had. A second idea I had was a tier 3 upgrade for Bat Riders that ignores armor in a way, which might be a bit extreme. This is probably more elegant if codable. Bat Riders are very extreme in their usage, and I would like to test this. I would like to see more Bat Riders in their desired role as anti-air.
you start scaling into the mid to late game, Orc actually loses the ability to deal with
30
heavy air effect.
30 bats should just do a fusion on a big bat, super bat that kills all air units on the field. I think we did a lot of experiments with bats and it didn't end up too well, Changer. So let's be careful with that.
The best Orc anti-air unit is Blade Master with Lightning Orb, and then either Bat Riders or Berserkers. Wind Riders, Raiders, Kodos, and Casters are not solutions to masked heavy air, and Griffins have often been the kryptonite against Orc, where it can become almost impossible to counter them because once upgrades start happening, those actually reduce Bat Rider damage. Griffins with Devotion, Protection Scroll, and Armor upgrades can drive the 550 figure to do something like 300-400 damage, where you need 3 to 4 bats for a single Griffin. And that should be the case. That should work, in my opinion. I think that's not an unhealthy development. But why not allow Bat Riders to also upgrade their damage scaling? Not on the secondary targets, which would mess up the balance when going up against things like Gargoyles, where they just do way too much splash. But why not allow Orc to remain in the arms race as upgrades continue? And you don't even have to give them 12% damage scaling, which is the bonus damage and armor that everybody gets from a singular upgrade. It could be even smaller scaling level, the same way that Wind Rider, I believe, gets only 8% scaling from damage. Having that would make them do 550, then 594, 638, 682 damage. And while that does look like a large number, this can be mitigated and then some by any armor upgrades on the
and protection scroll, and the third upgrade is also super expensive. I think this is very reasonable. I think this is very good.
Where 3 armored Griffins are not virtually uncounterable anymore. Okay, the impact of most of these changes, I expect them to be pretty small. It's just bringing up some units that barely see any play and that are quite weak all in some way. This is a bigger upgrade of the Orb of Lightning. Most orbs cost less. In my opinion, the best orb is Orb of Corruption, then Orb of Venom, or vice versa. Orb of Venom, then Corruption. Then Orb of Lightning, then Orb of Slow. Though all have their place. I think Orb of Slow is much stronger than Orb of Fire used to be. And the cost is Orb of Corruption 375, Venom 325, Orb of Slow I'm not sure, it might be 325. Orb of Lightning is still 375. It's quite expensive. Orc is generally the race that already has the least money. And it gives a 30% chance to do a Purge proc, but it's based on attack speed. I have 2 ideas for the Orb of Lightning that could help Orc a little bit dealing with air and getting lockdown that doesn't only rely on Raiders. They could follow a proc per minute approach. There is another game that uses this system, namely, I believe this came in Wrath of the Lich King in World of Warcraft, but was part of WoW Classic when I played it last year, this time around. There's a proc per minute approach that Feral Druid uses, where whether you are in feral bear form, where your attack is once per second, or whether you're in the cat form, once per 2.5 seconds actually it is, or whether you're a feral cat where you attack once per second, aka 2.5 times as fast, clear casting, Omen of Clarity, sought to have the same amount of procs for a unit, whether you are in bear or cat form, whether you attack 2.5 times as fast or not. So the Omen of Clarity approach uses a proc per minute, where it is agnostic to your attack speed. And right now, Blade Master is a great user of Orb of Lightning, but Farseer Shadow and Torrent Chieftain are not very good users of Orb of Lightning. You will still get it some.
But when a Blade Master is attacking a destroyer or a statue, it procs every hit. So he wants to reduce that? Why?
Maybe sometimes because you need it, but it is not particularly reliable or strong. And that's, of course, because it uses the RNG. Is it an idea to possibly use a procs per minute approach, where possibly the Blade Orb of Lightning is slightly less good than it is right now, but Orb becomes a little bit better on Torrent Chieftain, Shadow, and Farseer, where the ultimate result would be that roughly all of them would have the same RNG, the same chance to get Purge procs? That's one idea.
Couldn't this also lead to something weird, like in the first minute it procs at second 1, and in the second minute it procs at second 59, and then you got this huge gap in the middle? Would be a bit odd, because then the human, the orc orb would be the only orb that works that way. And I don't think orc necessarily needs more purge. Don't they struggle in like a million other ways, but lockdown is pretty good? It would help with like multiple orbs probably. I mean, you have Purge already if you want to. You have Hex, you have Ensnare, you have Stomp. Then you get that on top. Is that really... Do we really need more Purge in the game? It's more useful in Farseer. Yeah, I really think this... the gold thing? Maybe. Why, like, why not? I do see it. The second thing, this seems pretty complicated for a thing that's not really necessary and that doesn't solve like core issues. Not a huge fan. Big fan of the bats, not a great fan of this.
For it, that I think is worth considering. And then I thought maybe it should be brought down by 25 gold as well, because it'll become weaker for the Blade Master. Heal Salve is Orc's way of healing outside of Heal Wave and Healing Ward. I think Orc healing is one of the main problems that holds them back from being as competitive at the top level, together with Lin's absence. And it's 100 gold to heal, 400 x3.
And Grubby's absence, by the way. We have to point that out too.
Of course,
to hopefully guilt trip him into playing a B cup or something.
The unit is
will never happen,
but consumable healing unit, so he cannot fight for 45 seconds to get the full value. It's 100 gold. You're spending basically 2 to 3 heal salve full charges to recover from full fights every time, whereas human, undead, and night elf pretty much get all of their healing for free virtually via obsidian statue, priest, staff of sanctuary, Moonwell, Unholy Regen, Blight. Orc's healing is currently inaccessible in one-on-one via the Witch Doctor.
Yep.
Ubiquitous and completely necessary via the Shadowhunter Heal Wave, and completely necessary via the Heal Salve. And I think it would be fair, especially with the recent Speed Scroll nerf from 50 gold to 70, which I guess in an isolated perspective is valid with how good Speed Scroll is. But with how necessary Heal Salve is, I think it'd be fair to drop it a little bit. Could be 75, could be 80, but I'm looking to be a little bit timid with this and bring Heal Salve to 90 gold.
I wonder if, like, what's the... There's probably multiple issues, right, with Heal Salve. And, like, the healing, I totally agree. Like, sustain in fights is just not... Like, in fights or after fights, it's not just part of the core orc identity, and that gives them a big penalty at the moment. So that's 10 gold. That's how many heal salves do you buy a game? Like, that's not enough then, I guess, is it? Also, a problem is, to get this, you have to go back to base with at least one hero, obviously. You lose time on the map, while statues can heal you while creeping, priests can heal you while creeping, etc. So, I wonder if it's better to give them more charges to be able to stay on the map longer. If you should combine certain elements of this. I think losing map control to go home, even though you have a roaming hero most of the time, with the Blade Master Windwalk roaming, with the Farseer oftentimes roaming, you might have a carry hero, a courier hero, but then that hero that's supposed to be roaming and hunting the enemy is not hunting the enemy because he's going shopping, right? So, while I think that items should definitely be addressed, I find this very conservative. I'm not sure if this tackles the core problem in the correct way. I like the direction, obviously.
Okay, the Farseer. Both the Farseer and the Priestess of the Moon have some of the most useless skills in the game, in Scout and in Farsight. It's also what you're giving up for it. The Priestess of the Moon is in this funny spot where she has only one really exciting ability, True Shot, whereas Searing Arrow is strong but weaker than Orb of Venom, so you barely care about it. And Owl, you're just getting it because you have nothing else to pick when you're going Orb of Venom. And then you're forced to use it, and it is quite good to get vision, but it's not generally what you're looking for, because what do you do if you already know everything? Then you don't need that vision. You're just making it or not even using it. With Farsight, the problem is a little bit more complex, because Farsight by itself is not bad, but it gets worse the better you are at the game, because you're getting information with a reveal on the map. The better you are, the better you know already what someone else is doing. And that is that's partially true and it's partially not true. More info is always good. You always get confirmations. It also gives true sight. It already doesn't cost any mana, which is interesting. That it's a purely cooldown based spell that just gets bigger and bigger with every pick that you make. But yeah, I'm not sure that this is a great solution, because in a way, Farsight already saves you mana, because now you're not spending.
This just feels like a Sobi Mass kind of thing. I think this is really boring. I don't know. I totally agree that Farsight should get something cool. So this not it, man. This is not cool. It's also odd because it's then an active spell with a passive on top. Does that exist? No, right? I can't think of anything that has this interaction. Maybe give it like a scary vision where it appears, so it scares the enemy and has some sort of effect. And gives them like a, I don't know, something like an opposite taunt, so they run away from it. I don't know. This not it, man. This not it.
Mana on another secondary spell. Of course, Farseer uses Feral Spirit and Chain Lightning. So picking Farsight already saves you mana. So why give even more? My hope, I guess, would be that you could go Farseer second hero,
A jump scare, exactly.
Or reskill into this. Stop using Feral Spirits in situations where Feral Spirits are already countered. And maybe go for like a 1-1-2 build where you open Feral Spirit level 1 as a Farseer first hero. Then you go into Chain Lightning level 2 at Farseer 3. And then instead of picking Wolves again and barely caring about it because the enemy has competent Dispel, you could go Farsight as a fourth ability to get a little bit extra mana regen, just so that you can cast a little.
I don't hate the mana regen idea in general. Because orcs are lacking mana, right? Like, of course. Like a mana totem, is that too crazy? Could then, of course, be put in a fight as well. And if you use Farsight offensively, could the enemy benefit from it? I don't know. I feel like I like my vision. Yo, Razor! Welcome.
A little bit more Chain Lightning while also getting a bit of vision. I think this would be interesting. It should, of course, be in white. So. Okay, on to Nightelf. For Nightelf, I'm expecting them, if this change goes through where piercing damage becomes worse against heavy, I'm expecting Nightelf to struggle in the early game.
So, for Orc, as a conclusion, do you Orc players in the chat think that this fixes the issue that Orc has? What was it? Shaman, better research. Okay. Demolisher, Shaman, Witch Doctor, Bat Rider, Orb, Heal Cell, Farsight. I don't think that's gonna help Orc. I don't think this would help Orc much. Bat Rider, yep, for sure against Griffins. Heal Self, not really. Doesn't make Blade Master more playable. Doesn't help with Mana Reg. That's missing. But then he presents this as a whole, right? So we have to think about the fact that in his world, the Shadow Priest is nerfed. In his world, Militia is nerfed. In his world, Arcane Tower is nerfed. So it's always a possibility that the biggest buff to your race is the nerf of the other races. That's always possible.
Holds them.
So let's watch it in full.
An isolated look that you get because better get base. You're a bit more Chain Lightning while also getting a bit of Vits, which are I'm expecting Nightelf to struggle in the early game because Nightelf is basically almost always archers, which are piercing damage, into Dryads, which are piercing damage, and then eventually they benefit from that change where they get Druids of the Claw, which now take less from piercing. But because of that, I was thinking archers probably need to have +1 damage so that they don't suffer too much against ghouls, grunts, footmen, and also while creeping. So I think that's a necessary buff to Nightelf in that case. I've also been looking at the Huntress Glaive attack change, recently Blizzard made a change where Huntress Glaive bounce can no longer bounce to workers and other units. I didn't like it then, that you can no longer do it. I feel like it's an iconic identity for Huntresses to be able to kill repairing workers. And I don't feel like it was as OP as I predicted a year or two ago, where Huntress Glaive were buffed to get heavy, to change them to heavy armor away from unarmored, or however long ago that was.
So I was, of course, one of the biggest proponent of this change, but it's also not been implemented the way I proposed. So currently, if you attack a building, it's not jumping to anything. If you attack a unit, it's still jumping, but nothing else. So I think the best implementation is the glaive bounces from building to building. The glaive is bouncing from unit to unit. And that's it. But I wouldn't fully restore it. I hated it. I hate the gameplay if you attack a Great Hall and the repairing peons suffer. I hate it. Still hate it.
So to be clear, Huntress Glaive doesn't just give a third bounce, but it also gives Huntresses heavy armor instead of unarmored. And I thought that was going to be super broken. It really hasn't been. And now that they can't bounce on repairers, Huntress are not so much the base traders that they once used to be anymore. And it feels wrong to me. It was iconic and I miss it, even if it gets used against me. So I think they should get it back. This would also make Huntress, once again, a little bit more valid as an alternative to Archer openings. And that's important for some players that don't like playing with Archers, but they do like Night Elf. Okay, the Glaive Thrower is probably way overdue a build time change. Build time of a building or a unit also dictates, or at least traditionally has dictated, how long it takes to repair something. And if you've ever tried to repair a Glaive Thrower, you know how ridiculous it is. It's so slow and so costly to repair them. Now, I understand why
I never thought about that.
it also takes 48 seconds to build glaives. They are the only ranged siege unit with 1150 range that can be made at tier 1. And that allows potentially for some unique cheese tower push builds. This is rare though. We don't see this a lot from Night Elf anymore, and I would argue it's quite fun to see that from time.
Bro, I saw that from Neutron. Was it in B Cup? Jesus Christ, he built mass glaive throwers and freaking owned that kid. Yeah, I like that, man. I like glaive throwers as a unit. Give me more glaive throwers.
Time to time. The glaive throwers build time though makes it very rare. It just feels like you're not really getting very good value from glaive anytime you make them. That's why most players call them game throwers, not glaive throwers. Nice one, right? Elbow to the ribs, pinch the cheeks. And then the Vorpal blade upgrade was changed, of course, recently, where they make projectile speed very fast. That makes them less likely to miss. It makes them very likely to hit. That's pretty cool, but and it also enables them to kill trees, which right now they can't. The cost is quite high, though, for an upgrade that I really don't think the upgrade is good enough to justify this cost. Night Elves very hesitatingly ever make a glaive at all, and only in the most dire of situations. They're certainly not spamming glaives to kill unarmored units or anything like that. And so I think even if this upgrade costs 50-50, you probably still wouldn't see it being used at all. I don't think you would see any glaives for the purpose of combat. But just to be conservative, I had a smaller buff, but I think it would be totally worth actually to put this at 75 as well.
Yeah, why not?
Okay, Druid of the Talon.
Will you be at BlizzCon? Dude, I got no idea. We don't know the system. We don't know anything. We have no idea.
Once used to be a nightmare for orc players. The times in the history.
Dude, can pigs fly? Is hell freezing over? Grubby is proposing a cyclone buff. Bro. If someone at any time in human history is inventing time travel, and maybe they did already, I don't know. But if someone is inventing time travel, please take this moment in time, make a screenshot or take the video, time travel back to 2005 and show Grubby of 2005 this video, this picture. I would love it, man. What 2005 Grubby would do to 2025 Grubby for even thinking about buffing Talon Master Training.
Of esports, where I remember Druids of the Talon Master Training to be used, was of course the entire duration from 2005 to 2019. Druids of the Talon were the main spammed unit for Nightelf against Orc, with Druid of the Claw Dryad being a pocket strategy that would sometimes be used after people got too comfortable blind countering Talons, even though they were losing more games as Orc against Talons than they were winning. That's what they focused on, and that enabled Druid of the Claw to come out now and then. But Talon was the king. Talons also have been used sometimes in Nightelf Mirror. It usually goes something like this. One player masses archers, the other tries to go to Druids of the Claw. The archer guy then goes for Talon spam so that he can maybe cyclone the Druid of the Claw player. And then the Druid of the Claw player switches to Mountain Giants and gets resistance
It's the best.
which won't be cycloned nearly as long.
The
and
best.
Also, Mountain Giants take about 8 times less damage from a Druid of the Talon than a Druid of the Claw. So it just makes sense if you can make that tech transition. That whole counter versus counter thing in Night of Mirror is quite interesting.
Yes.
It's some of the most fun that you can have in Night of Mirror, when you have many builds possible and not just Druids of the Claw Dryad. So I would like to see Talon builds becoming more possible again in Night of Mirror. Also, Druid of the Talon has almost all but disappeared and is pretty much never being used against Orc right now.
I don't really know why not many people play Talons, because I don't know the stats of the unit by heart. But I said this many times. Talons make everything better. Talons make the matchup versus Undead better in Crow form. Talons make the matchup versus Orc better. Moon played it versus Fortitude, and it was hella fun seeing it against Human. They make Mirror better. More Talons is good for the game. So if it's build time, if it's HP, if it's +1 damage, if it's resources, I don't really know what prevents Night Elves from going more to this unit. I love them. And someone has to tell the world what the problem is with Talons currently. Except that AoE is very good against them, of course. But Fairy Fire is insane as Focus Fire help. And it's so fun. So do something to Talon. I don't think the Talon core identity should be Cyclone. I think the Talon core identity should be Focus Fire enhancement. Because that's what makes them really cool.
And I never thought, actually, the old Grubby would be so disappointed in me. He would probably try to, I don't know, stub his foot so that I would have a permanent scar, maybe a little bit of discomfort, at least the traumatic memory now in the current time.
Even if you have one win, one talent,
talent buffs. But I think if you see the rest of the balance sheet suggestions that I have for Night Elf, it is justified. Again, this is a very unused unit that barely sees any play in any matchup. They're actually potentially valid against Undead, Orc, and Night Elf. Talons can now do piercing attacks against destroyers, so they see some play in the Night Elf Undead matchup. It's not a lot, it's a little bit. They're almost valid against Orc, but the fortified defenses that Orc can have at tier 2 now have pretty much shut that strategy in quite a bit, because a large portion of what made Talons viable is the ever-present threat of raiding burrows. And Talons do literally 6 times as much damage on on heavy armor burrows as they do on fortified burrows. Talons do 6 times as much damage on heavy armor than on fortified burrows, which is why they were so good against Orc before because they threatened an Orc they have to remain nearby their base or they lose all their burrows.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but I also think that players learn to position better and maybe maps are more wide open than they were before. So it is harder to position talents. And yeah, I mean, fortified just breaks talents. Like fortified towers, fortified bases.
That was part of the chokehold that talents had. And that's gone because we can get tier 2 reinforced now. It pretty much killed the build outside of some other changes. I mean, in 2007, Orb of Venom did 90 damage for a single attack. Now it's 48. So there were definitely other changes too that affected the talent thing. Serpent wards are better than before. Mirror image is better than before. All of it helped. But a large part is the reinforced defenses. So let's make them come out a little bit earlier, would be my suggestion, to make them potentially valid in all 4 matchups so that Nightelf have an alternative to spamming Druids of the Claw and Dryads. Okay, Orb of Venom. Like I said, Orb of Venom in 2007 did 90 damage. It was nerfed in 2008. It was nerfed and buffed various times in the history. At the moment, Orb of Venom is 325 gold. It does 48 damage, 8 damage per tick, and 6 damage ticks total over the course of 6 seconds. That doesn't make sense. 6 times 6 is 36. 6 ticks of damage. 6 ticks of damage. Wait, 6 times 8. Yeah, it makes sense. I wrote it funny. Yes, it's 6 times 8, 48 damage in total. And that's a lot. It means if you keep attacking the same target at infinitum, Orb of Venom is a clause of attack plus 8, plus 40 when you stop. So infinite attacks lead to 8 damage per hit, or 8 damage per second. Let's say you attack once per second, and then plus 40, infinite plus 40. If you do a single attack, it's 48 damage. If you keep switching attack, it's 48 to him, 48 to him, 48 to him. That's a lot. That's like a clause of attack plus 48 if you switch target. It's very powerful. For 325 gold, anyone would want it. And in fact, Nightelf is the only race that always wants to get 3 orbs if they can afford it and if the game goes long enough.
Yeah, because they also stack. Like, no other orb really stacks, right? I mean, if you attack with 3 units on 1 unit with an Orb of Lightning, obviously the chances to proc are higher. Same for Orb of Slow, but it doesn't stack. Like, the Undead Orb doesn't stack, so obviously you only need 1. Orb of Venom is such part of the core identity of Night Elves. I don't know if I want to, like, reduce it. I'm not a huge fan of, like, triple orb poison stack shenanigans, but I do think that it's also necessary at the moment. I would probably bring Orb of Venom in line with Orb of Corruption to make it 375. I think that's reasonable. Only in tandem with buffs to units that are currently not used.
The second race that would want more orbs might be Orc, with multiple orbs of lightning.
I don't think an item should be part of a race core identity. I would argue every race has items that are part of their core identity. Orcs have speed scrolls. Orcs have tiny great halls. Humans have the staff. Humans have regen scroll. Undeads need their items to expand. Orb of Corruption is basically built into a Lich. Also, Orb of Venom nowadays. Like, every race makes great use of their items.
It's not fantastic, but occasionally that money is spent. Orb of Corruption multiples, we pretty much never see it, although it is a very good orb. And Orb of Slow, I haven't seen it yet, though it could be good as well. Orb of Venom, in my opinion, is the best orb in the game. At 325 gold, a massive damage amp. It is so good that Orb of Venom actually gets prioritized in use over hero abilities. If a Night Elf player has a Naga level 4 with Frost Arrow level 2 and Fork Lightning level 2, they literally disable Frost Arrow level 2 in order to just use Orb of Venom. You could have a Searing Arrow, which does 24 damage per hit on the bottom at level 4 bottom, and you'll use Orb of Venom instead and just don't use Searing Arrow. That's how good it is. But you cannot ever imagine anyone turning off an ability entirely on another hero for Orb of Lightning's effect. Like, you wouldn't stop casting Chain Lightning level 2 or Feral Spirits level 2 in lieu of...
And that begs the question, is the orb too good or is the ability too bad?
Orb of Lightning. Venom is very strong, and I think it's too strong. I think it should be brought down a bit. Yeah, I think so. And then Demon Hunter, Immolation, right now does 12 DPS at level 1, 22 at level 2, and 34 at level 3. I think that's a lot. Especially for races that are forced to deal with Demon Hunter with melee units, like Orc is. I think it should be brought down a little bit. Both the early game creeping power of it, just from 12 to 11, not too big of an effect, but then a slightly bigger effect afterwards. And then for Priestess of the Moon, her mana cost for Searing Arrow is 8. I don't have any creative ideas for Scout Owl right now. I do agree Priestess is boring. I don't think she needs to be valid as a first hero per se. Not every hero is meant to be valid as a first hero.
Exactly. Thank you. Thank you. Oh, yes, please. More people have to shout it from the rooftops. Not every hero needs to be a first hero. That's so true. Some heroes can just be tier 2 support, tier 3 support. That's totally fine.
That can't be made first, like Blood Mage. Shadowhunter can barely be done. Tauren Chieftain. Yeah, and Priestess of the Moon, I guess, is one of those. Undead seems to be able to make every hero first, but it's partially because they are able to fast expand, and that pretty much opens up the amount of resources you can pump into a hero to become valid, whereas otherwise they're not. Priestess is dull, yes, but she's a good damage amp at higher levels. She gets used sometimes as a third hero in the current meta in various matchups for her true shot and the fact that she's ranged. Nightelf wanting a ranged hero, they don't have a lot of options. They may already have Keeper, or they may not. Keeper might be too easily dispellable. 2 of his spells. Thorns may not have value in a ranged.
Also, I think the biggest thing is ranged, of course, as an orb carry, and detection. Detection and scouting. That's something Nightelf lack. And that's what the Potom brings to the table.
War that pretty much leaves Nightelf with Naga, which they probably already have. Dark Ranger, which may not bring as much damage as Priestess, and maybe there's no need for her spells. So usually you're not making Priestess because you think she's going to be amazing per se. She's just a decent damage stick that you get as a third against Undead, or maybe some other matchup, and then you give her an Orb of Venom, which makes her amazing. Searing is mostly a spell that you use when you make her as first. I think you could make this 7 or even 6, maybe 6 to 7. But I'm not sure how this will affect Nightelf Mirror. Is it fun if Priestess becomes the most popular pick again in Nightelf Mirror, where demon archers can't even survive? I don't know if that's a good idea or not, if Night Elves would enjoy that. I have a little bit less of a stake or interest in that per se, because I don't play it as much. But I think 8 mana, just for what Searing does, is very high. And maybe 6 or 7 would be better. All right?
Kind of interesting suggestions for the Night Elves. So, I think everybody has to be aware that Demon Hunter needs a nerf. Demon Hunter's crazy. Demon Hunter's always been good, but at the moment, Demon Hunter's crazy. I also realize that at the moment, Demon Hunter is a necessity. I don't think Keeper is as bad as many people make him to be. So I don't think he needs anything groundbreaking. So it's totally fine that Grubby doesn't address Keeper, even though if someone has a great idea how to gently push him, I wouldn't be against it. I think if you do this Huntress change, they also got compensation, right? For taking the bouncy glaives away. Then you probably have to dial back on that compensation as well. I think they got movement speed and something. If you just give it back, Huntress could be mega strong and define meta. I think what's completely missing is fairy dragons, unfortunately. I think fairy dragons must be used more. Because they're such a cool unit too. Just not the greatest impact at the moment. And I think if you give a gentle nudge to talents or enable talents and give a reason to go fairy dragons, then Nightelf is super cool. I personally am of the opinion that rejuvenation is too strong. And if you buff 3 other units, Huntress, Talon, Fairy, you could shave away something of the rejuvenation, because I think it's really crazy good. So that would be probably my trade-off. Everybody's sick and tired of Dryad Bears, man. I do realize it's totally necessary and the most viable thing at the moment, but goddamn, isn't everybody tired of Dryad Bears? Even the Night Elves must be tired of Dryad Bears. So yeah, that would be my thing, I guess. And not sure if you have to reduce the damage. I think increasing the cost is fine-ish. Was Mass Fairy meta against Undead for a while, right? Always scary to buff magic immune units. I think what kind of killed them was one specific change. Where was it? This one, maybe? Mana Flare max damage reduced from 100 to 80? That kind of killed it, right? So maybe push this to 90 or something. I don't know if there's any big numbers, but yeah, that would be cool. Because fairy dragons, if not masked, are really cool.
And maybe 6 or 7 would be better. Frost attack. All right. Then let's go to Undead. Undead has this interesting issue where there's one hard-coded ability called Frost Attack. Frost Attack is the same across the board for all manners of things that slow with Frost. Namely, it's a 50% movement slow and 25% attack speed slow. And that leads to this weird situation where it's all extremely powerful. It makes micro for the
Piercing damage nerf for fairies and archers, buffing heavy armor for ghouls and statues. Nah. Mass air was dead before. Mass air fairies were dead before. Way before. Piercing damage was this year. I don't think I've seen mass fairy dragons for like 2 years. That was it, right? But yeah, nobody, like, okay, let's never, ever do this back again. We have so much air in the game. We got mass Dragonhawks. We got mass Griffins. We got lots of Destroyers. We got mass Wyvern. Mass air sucks. Let's not bring in mass air. No. That's not what we want. We want the fairy dragon in their cool, badass, I fly into the danger zone, deploy, and I wreck a bunch of casters when they do stuff. That's what the fairy dragons do. That's what the fairy dragons need to do. Not mass air fairy dragons. No.
The defending player very difficult. It makes undead bases a terror to go into, which promotes passive play by the undead because their main base and their expo are so strong with Nerubian Tower and Black Citadel Halls of the Dead. And that automatically makes the non-undead player turtly as well because he doesn't want to go into the undead base. It's often been a creed for everybody, never attack an undead base. Now, that was fine while Undead was confined to a singular base. It meant that you could break an Undead with an expansion. But recently, over the last 5 years, Undead has received numerous buffs to fast expansion play. And if I were to coach any player that is not at the skill of Happy or somewhere thereabouts, I would say Undead should be played with a fast expansion every single game. It's almost like they're the new human. race, where fast expand is a prerequisite to play Undead. Undead 1-base play, I think, is the most difficult at medium to lower levels, and it is also the least effective at medium to lower levels. The best part of Undead play is that they can be turtley. Even on 1-base, it can make it difficult for another player to defeat them at medium to low level play because of that stronghold that the Undead defensive structures offer. I think Frost Attack is way too powerful. I think Nerubian Tower and Arcane Tower are the best towers in the game. My tier list for towers in the game is probably going something like this. Tier S, like rank 1, best tower, Nerubian, next best, / next best, / then next best is Arcane Tower, then next, and then you're going to get things like Watchtower, AP, Guard Tower, maybe Cannon Tower is over here. Like, it's not even close. This one is like massive slow. Then you've got massive mana burn and 800 range. Then you've got 800 range and fortified armor and splash and 100 damage. Then you have a accessible tower, Watchtower, that has 800 range. Then you have the 2 piercing damage towers that give 700 range. And Guard Tower is by far the worst because he doesn't have fortified armor or the ability to get up and move around like Ancient Protector. Now, while it is okay that some towers are better than others, there's no problem with that at all. I think the degree to which Nerubian and its ilk are better than others is fairly egregious. So, my suggestion would be to nerf Frost across the board.
I don't think it's that drastic.
And bring up Undead in other ways. I think much of the Undead power comes from their ability to fast expand, and then place a Nerubian Tower, which basically makes harass impossible because when you harass, unless you have many sacrificial units like a human with footmen or an undead with skeletons, ghouls, beetles, whatnot, you're pretty much not going to want to commit any units of worth into Nerubian unless you bring the power to all in and win right there, which humans or orcs will desperately try to do if there's an expansion there. Nobody would dare to commit units or heroes to it because the slow is so large. And while that still remains mostly true at this value, I still think it would be a fair change to make it a little bit less egregious.
I think that, like, that's huge, isn't it? Like, that's a lot. It's very sad, actually, that this Frost Attack is hard-coded and part of so many things, because that makes it insanely hard to address. It's part of your base defense, it's part of a tower rush, it's part of your Lich, and Lich has been getting the poor boy, or whatever it is, got hurt a lot. Is there a crazy good compensation there? Ghouls. Ghoul damage reverted. I think it's too drastic.
It's a word I've been using a lot, but I think it applies. Nerubian Tower, Frost Nova, Frost Armor, Halls of the Dead, Black Citadel, and Frostworm, all slow by the max amount of 50 and 25. I think it should be brought down a bit.
Like a nerf to Lich that's been reduced in power level by a lot. Frostworm that's never played. I also don't think Undead bases are as scary as they were before. For the Nerub Tower, I totally agree. 100% agree. Very good tower. Very good attack. But is it worth to sacrifice everything else for the Nerubian Tower? I don't think so.
Duration maybe doesn't have to change. Now, that's a really big impact change, and it affects everyone at every level, low, medium, high. It makes Undead a little bit less turtly potentially, but it also lowers key tools. And I don't think Undead is the best race. I think Undead might be third best right now. In my mind, it's human, then elf, then undead, then orc. But Undead can be very oppressive with their fast expansion play in various matchups, like against elf and human. and this will affect them. Now, I think there have been some balance changes that have happened that maybe can be inverted, particularly the ghoul. The ghoul lost 1 damage recently. I still feel like that was mostly an anti-Happy change because Happy was so successful with Undead for so long. And even now he's still winning, by the way. And he's also winning with random. So I don't know.
It wasn't. It was not. Remember the early stage, no, the group stage of Super League. Labby dominating, Happy dominating, 1-0 slightly behind. Because that came with the piercing damage nerf. I explained this many, many times. This came with the after the piercing damage nerf. And then ghouls were by far, alongside Footman, the best tier 1 unit. And you could do whatever you wanted to do. At any point. I think we got rid of a lot of boring super swarm tactics that included ghouls. We got rid of a lot of boring do or die timing pushes that included ghouls. And this made the game better in pretty much every matchup. And more entertaining to watch. I'd say instead of +1 damage ghoul, I would rather say -1 damage footman because it was so good to lower the damage of the ghouls. I know I'm more or less alone with this, but I have very strong feelings on this as well.
I feel like Happy, more than any other player, cannot be looked at to nerf Undead. I think every time he wins, it hurts Undeads below him because nobody is as good as him in micro and in innovation and change and so on and etc. I was looking for some buffs to various Undead units. I don't think this is necessarily my finest work or best suggestions. 1 extra agility on Dreadlord, Frostworm to come out 5 seconds faster, Crypt Fiend, which are less popular than ghouls, to get 1 extra damage. If you have any other ideas, do let me know. I think this is a necessary change, but I don't like its impact on nerfing Undead. I do think it's a necessary change to make those things less oppressive.
Fair.
But then they should get back something else elsewhere. Should it be the Banshee, the Necro, the Ghoul, the Fiend? I'm addressing 2 key units. I do think giving them both 1 extra damage helps, even if it is not very creative. Dreadlord is extremely niche, so it's a very low impact change. And Frostworm is also very niche. Again, a low impact change. So I'm not completely satisfied with it. I'm not completely satisfied with it, but hopefully it will help a little bit. All right, those are some of my suggestions. Let me know what you think.
I'm not entirely sure what the agility is supposed to do. Obviously makes him a bit more tanky. That's about it. If someone has a better explanation why that is necessary, would be cool. I like the Frostworm build time, I think. Yeah, I can't think of too much either. Necros are an obvious thing. Now we need to nerf footies and bears. I never said nerf bears. I said nerf redo. Who wants to nerf bears?
If you have any other ideas, I would love to hear it. And I'll read the comments on the YouTube video as well.
Was the heavy ammo buff necessary for them? For bears, yep. For footmen, no, they got defend.
Well, let me know what you think, and hope you enjoyed hearing this, and hopefully it will stimulate some discussion, maybe give some ideas. GG's.
Probably not exactly my vision of a patch. Certainly some good ideas in there. I think the piercing damage interaction with heavy armor is in a good spot. I think some things are missing, like neutral heroes. Some changes to neutral heroes are, I think, missing. I somewhat like the idea he's going into with mercenary camps, because the game has changed so much and values on mercenary camps are archaic. He did say he didn't think about tavern heroes. Okay. There's some low-hanging fruits there possibly as well. To me, it's very interesting that there's no mention of footman or water elemental or rejuve. So I definitely see things a little bit differently. In general, we walk the same path and walk in the same direction. Just a couple of different opinions, I think, and different balance in what we value and what we think is crazy strong. And maybe I don't see the greater context of what he created, but yeah, some stuff's cool. And yeah, we definitely go together with the bad change, even though I'm not an expert on numbers. And yeah, I don't think the 10 gold reduction on heal self is necessarily tackling the right thing. So yeah, I see a lot of people up in arms. I don't think it's any, like, shouldn't be a reason to get mad at him. It's not grubby mega orc bias, I think. It's somewhat reasonable. I expected worse, to say the least. So you guys can give your feedback. You guys can give your suggestions. Obviously, this is the time to do it. The PTR is live and Blizzard is looking at the forums and looking at the Reddits for suggestions.